There are forces in life that we cannot always see with our eyes, but we feel them. A heaviness, a resistance, a pattern that repeats across generations. These are the unseen chains, witchcraft, curses, and spiritual blockages. But nature itself holds the key to freedom. One of the most powerful gifts is honey. Sweet in taste yet mighty in spirit. Today, I will reveal to you how honey can destroy witchcraft and instantly break the generational curses that seek to hold you captive. When we begin to understand honey, not only as something we consume for taste, but as something sacred, our entire perspective shifts. Honey is not just a sweet substance, it is the product of harmony, of diligence, and of nature working in perfect rhythm. Every drop carries within it the essence of flowers, the work of countless bees, and the patience of time itself. This is why it has been regarded in many traditions as a divine connector, a substance that brings the earthly closer to the heavenly. When you bring honey into your spiritual practice, you are not simply using a natural resource. You are invoking something that represents purity, abundance, and blessing. Think about it carefully. Bitterness has no place where sweetness resides. When honey touches your lips, the natural bitterness within you begins to soften. The heart opens, the mind calms, and your words become aligned with something higher. This is why honey, when used with prayer or meditation, amplifies your connection to the divine. The energy it carries is not just physical, it is spiritual. It becomes a bridge between your heart and the presence of divine protection. When you hold honey in your hands with intention, you are holding more than a physical object. You are holding a symbol of God's favor, a sign of provision, and a tool to shift the energy around you. In ancient times, offerings of honey were made to seal covenants and express gratitude to the heavens. This was not accidental. People understood that honey carried a vibration of blessing, and wherever it was present, light could overpower darkness. If you have ever felt the weight of spiritual attacks, if you have ever sensed the lingering shadow of curses that were not even yours but inherited from generations before you, then you know how desperately the soul longs for a way to connect to something pure. Honey becomes that pathway. By placing honey on your tongue while declaring words of truth and freedom, you allow your voice to be carried with sweetness into the spiritual realm. And in that moment, you align yourself with divine favor, making it impossible for bitterness and curses to remain. But the power of honey is not only in consuming it. It is in recognizing its symbolism and carrying that awareness into your daily life. When you anoint your prayers with honey, you remind yourself and the unseen realm that you are choosing sweetness over bitterness, love over hatred, and light over darkness. Every time you use honey with intention, you are not merely performing a ritual. You are affirming your connection with the Creator, declaring that your life is aligned with divine abundance and protection. Generational curses often thrive because there is disconnection, because families lose their awareness of who they truly are and what they are connected to. Honey restores this awareness. It pulls you back into harmony, reminding you that life was meant to flow with sweetness and not with endless cycles of bitterness and pain. To use honey with conscious intention is to invite that restoration into your own life, to say, this chain ends with me. And so, when you use honey as a divine connector, you are not only nourishing your body, you are nourishing your spirit. You are inviting divine blessing into your home, your words, and your lineage. In this way, honey becomes more than food, it becomes a key to freedom. Bitterness is one of the most powerful weapons that witchcraft and curses use to anchor themselves in a person's life. It seeps into the mind, it poisons the heart, and it clouds the spirit. When someone carries bitterness, whether it comes from past wounds, rejection, betrayal, or even envy, it creates an opening where negative forces can attach and thrive. That bitterness does not simply stay hidden within. It spreads into thoughts, into words, into actions, until it becomes a cycle that keeps repeating itself. And the truth is, curses are built upon such cycles. They need that negative energy to survive. They cling to the heaviness, to the darkness, to the resentment that bitterness creates. But honey carries a completely different vibration. Honey is sweetness, harmony, and light. Where bitterness hardens the heart, honey softens it. Where bitterness blocks blessings, honey opens doors. When honey is used with purpose, it dismantles the very foundation upon which curses and witchcraft are constructed. It changes the frequency, it changes the atmosphere. The sweetness of honey doesn't just mask the bitterness, it neutralizes it. It overwhelms it until what once seemed like a heavy weight has no more power. When you place honey upon your tongue, it is not just about the taste that lingers. It is about what it represents. You are saying, I choose sweetness over resentment. I choose love over hatred. I choose peace over turmoil. And when you make that choice, the spiritual realm responds. Darkness cannot coexist with such a declaration. The bitterness that witchcraft depends on begins to crumble, because you have shifted the very soil it tries to root itself in. Imagine someone speaking words of envy against you, words laced with hatred and malice. Those words attempt to carry a vibration that sticks to you, that creates resistance in your life. But when you have aligned yourself with sweetness, when you have brought honey into your spiritual practices, that vibration cannot take hold. It meets a frequency of peace, of abundance, of harmony, and it dissolves. This is why honey is more than just a natural substance. It is a spiritual tool of transformation. Many people do not realize that curses often persist because the individual unknowingly feeds them with bitterness. They hold on to past pain. They replay betrayals in their mind. They live in anger and resentment. All of these emotions keep the curse alive. But the moment you introduce sweetness, the moment you let honey become part of your prayers, part of your declarations, you are starving that curse. You are taking away the fuel it needs to continue. There is also a reason why honey has been associated with joy and celebration throughout history. To taste honey is to remind the soul of abundance. It is to reconnect with the simple truth that life was meant to flow with goodness, not bitterness. When you allow that truth to settle into your spirit, you begin to see your life differently. You begin to expect blessings instead of misfortune, peace instead of chaos, and healing instead of pain. This shift is what dismantles witchcraft at its core. It cannot stand against a heart that has chosen sweetness. So when you feel the weight of bitterness trying to take root, use honey with intention. Let it touch your tongue as you speak life over yourself. Place it in your home as a reminder that sweetness rules over bitterness in your space. Use it in prayer as a symbol of victory over envy and hatred. And as you do, notice how the bitterness fades, how the heaviness lifts, how curses lose their grip. Generational curses are like invisible threads woven through the fabric of a family line. They show up in repeated struggles, in cycles of poverty, sickness, broken relationships, addictions, or patterns of misfortune that seem to follow one generation after another. Often, people live their whole lives believing that these struggles are normal, that they are simply fate, when in truth they are the residue of curses passed down through bloodlines. These chains are strong because they are reinforced through repetition. Every time the same pattern repeats, it gains more weight, more influence. And yet, even something so deeply rooted can be broken when the right spiritual key is used. Honey holds one of those keys. Honey carries within it the vibration of sweetness, of blessing, of abundance. When you bring honey into your spiritual practice with conscious intention, it does something extraordinary. It interrupts the cycle. Where bitterness has reigned, sweetness is introduced. Where heaviness has persisted, lightness takes its place. This interruption is not small, it is powerful, because cycles of curses depend on continuity. They survive because the same negative energy keeps being repeated through thoughts, words, and actions. But when you declare freedom while using honey, you are cutting into that cycle. You are saying that the chain ends here, that the sweetness of divine blessing will replace the bitterness of generational pain. Think of it like this: every time you use honey in prayer, every time you speak words of truth while tasting its sweetness, you are reprogramming your spirit. You are rewriting the story of your bloodline. What your ancestors may have carried, you do not have to carry. The patterns that may have claimed them do not have the right to claim you. Honey becomes a reminder of this truth, a physical and spiritual act that says, I choose freedom, not repetition. When honey is combined with words of declaration, its effect is amplified. Words spoken with bitterness often keep curses alive, but words spoken with sweetness release blessing. If you have noticed cycles of failure or destruction in your family, take honey and speak over yourself. This cycle ends with me. I will not pass this weight to the next generation. My children and their children will walk in freedom. As those words are spoken, you are not just speaking for yourself. You are shifting the spiritual inheritance of everyone who comes after you. There is something deeply symbolic about using honey to break generational curses. Honey is produced through transformation. Bees take what is raw and bitter from nature and turn it into something sweet and life-giving. In the same way, your pain, your struggles, and the patterns that once held your family can be transformed into a testimony of freedom and blessing. Honey embodies that transformation. It is a reminder that no matter how bitter the past has been, it can be turned into sweetness through divine power. What is important is that you do not approach this lightly. Breaking generational curses requires intention, consistency, and faith. Honey is not a magical object, it is a divine symbol. When used with awareness and aligned with your spirit, it becomes a powerful tool. It tells the spiritual realm that you are no longer agreeing with the curses of the past. You are no longer feeding them. Instead, you are choosing to align with sweetness, with blessing, with the flow of abundance that was always meant for you. Generational curses lose their grip when someone in the family decides to stand and say, "Enough." Honey gives you the strength to make that stand, to declare a new chapter not just for yourself, but for all who come after you. Purification is one of the most essential steps in any journey of spiritual freedom, because curses and witchcraft do not only operate on the surface. They contaminate the atmosphere around you, they pollute your inner state, and they attach themselves to your environment. Just as dust settles on a surface over time, spiritual residue gathers in unseen ways. This is why some people feel a heaviness in their homes, why their thoughts are clouded without reason, or why they carry a weight inside their hearts that they cannot explain. Without cleansing, these energies continue to linger, quietly influencing daily life. But honey carries a unique ability to purify, to cut through that contamination, and to establish a shield of protection. When honey is used with awareness, it becomes more than food for the body, it becomes medicine for the soul. Placing honey upon the tongue during prayer is not only symbolic, it is transformative. The moment sweetness enters the mouth, bitterness within begins to dissolve. As words of prayer or declaration flow, they are carried on the sweetness of honey, rising with purity rather than being weighed down by residue. This simple act allows your voice to enter the spiritual realm clothed in purity, and it disrupts the heaviness that curses try to maintain. Honey also works as a purifier for the spaces you live in. When bitterness, envy, or conflict have touched a home, the atmosphere becomes unsettled. Energy lingers in walls, in rooms, even in the objects people use daily. This is why some households seem constantly filled with arguments, financial setbacks, or restlessness. But when honey is used symbolically in such spaces, it changes the atmosphere. It declares that sweetness is now the ruling presence, not bitterness. Just as one drop of honey shifts the taste of water, even a small act of bringing honey into a home with prayer can shift the entire spiritual environment. Protection is the natural extension of purification. Once the heaviness is cleansed, a shield must be established so that witchcraft and curses cannot return. Honey provides this shield because it attracts divine favor. Where divine favor is present, darkness cannot remain. When honey is consumed with prayer or placed with intention in an environment, it becomes a signpost in the spiritual realm, a mark that says this space, this life, this family is aligned with divine blessing and cannot be touched by destructive forces. The reason honey is so effective for purification and protection is because it represents alignment with nature's harmony. Honey is produced only through unity, bees working together, plants giving their nectar, time allowing transformation. This harmony cannot coexist with the chaos that witchcraft creates. By bringing honey into your practice, you are choosing harmony over disruption, purity over contamination, protection over vulnerability. You are declaring that your inner world and outer world will no longer be polluted by unseen forces, but instead will be guarded by sweetness and peace. This is not about superstition, nor is it about relying on objects as if they hold power on their own. The power comes from the intention, the awareness, and the alignment with divine truth. Honey is simply the carrier, the bridge that allows your declarations to manifest more fully. It helps you embody purity, it helps you hold sweetness in your heart, and it creates a shield of favor that curses cannot penetrate. And so, when you allow honey to cleanse and protect, you are not only removing what does not belong, you are building an atmosphere where only peace, blessing, and divine presence can remain. When we talk about spiritual warfare, we often imagine battles that are loud, dramatic, and filled with visible signs. But the truth is, the most dangerous battles are fought in silence, in the unseen spaces of the heart and spirit. Witchcraft operates in shadows, using subtle ways to influence, to manipulate, and to weaken. Yet, even in such battles, nature has provided us with tools that disarm the darkness. Honey is one of those tools, and its role in spiritual warfare is unlike anything else. Honey carries within it both attraction and entrapment. It is sweet, it draws in what surrounds it, but at the same time, it holds and immobilizes. Think of how honey catches and traps insects when they land upon it, how it entangles them so that they cannot escape. In the same way, when honey is used with spiritual awareness, it does not only protect, it reverses the plans of those who seek to harm you. The energy of witchcraft sent against you can become ensnared, stuck, and powerless in the sweetness you have established around your life. This is important to understand because many people live in fear of attacks. They feel as though they are constantly vulnerable, constantly open to harm. But when you use honey as part of your spiritual discipline, you no longer live in fear. Instead of being the hunted, you become the protected. Every scheme, every curse, every projection of envy finds itself stuck, unable to advance, unable to reach its target. The very atmosphere of sweetness that honey creates becomes a shield, but also a trap that turns the weapons of darkness into nothingness. Honey also reminds us that warfare is not always about aggression. Sometimes the most effective victory comes through gentleness, through peace, through sweetness itself. Witchcraft thrives on fear, on hatred, on bitterness. But honey offers none of that. When honey is introduced, the battleground changes. It no longer operates on the terms of the enemy, it operates on divine terms, on the vibration of blessing and abundance. This shift dismantles the strength of curses because they cannot exist in an atmosphere of sweetness. Consider this: when you pray with honey, when you declare over your life while tasting its sweetness, you are not only speaking words, you are clothing those words with a power that disarms darkness. You are creating a spiritual field that is unwelcoming to attacks. And if anything is sent against you, it is caught, it is tangled, it is rendered useless. This is what makes honey a powerful tool in warfare. It doesn't just shield you, it actively neutralizes the force of what was meant to harm you. There is also a lesson honey teaches in these battles. Honey is produced with patience, with diligence, with countless small efforts of bees working together. Victory in spiritual warfare is often the same. It is not about one grand act but about consistent alignment, daily choosing sweetness over bitterness, daily declaring freedom instead of fear. In this consistency, the enemy finds no doorway to enter, no weakness to exploit. The more you align with sweetness, the less room there is for curses to find a foothold. Honey becomes not only your shield but your strategy. It shows you that true warfare is not about matching darkness with darkness, but about overwhelming it with light. And so, when honey becomes part of your spiritual warfare, you are no longer fighting from a place of fear. You are standing in victory, knowing that every plan against you is already entangled and powerless. When curses are broken and witchcraft loses its grip, there is something far greater that takes place than just the removal of darkness. It is not only about what is taken away, it is about what is restored. Freedom is never empty. It always makes space for something new. Honey plays a unique role here, because beyond its power to purify, protect, and dismantle curses, it also carries the ability to manifest blessing. It is a vessel of abundance, a carrier of sweetness, a symbol that life was always meant to overflow with goodness. When honey is used with awareness, it invites more than just protection. It invites increase. It calls in peace where there was conflict, joy where there was sorrow, and prosperity where there was lack. This is because honey represents the flow of blessing, the natural state of life when it is aligned with divine order. Just as bees gather nectar tirelessly and transform it into something rich and nourishing, so too does your life begin to gather and transform when aligned with sweetness. What was once bitter can become sweet, what was once broken can become whole, and what was once blocked can begin to flow again. It is easy to think of curses only in terms of restriction, as barriers that prevent movement. And that is true. They keep doors closed, they limit opportunities, they suppress potential. But when those barriers are removed, something powerful happens. Honey becomes the activator, ensuring that the doors do not just open, but that they open into abundance. When honey is taken with prayer or placed with intention in a home, it does not only cleanse the space, it fills it with sweetness. The atmosphere shifts from one of heaviness to one of lightness, and in that atmosphere, blessings can finally manifest freely. This is why it is important not to stop at breaking curses, but to move into declaring blessings. Honey helps in this transition. Speaking words of freedom with honey on your tongue gives them weight. They are clothed in sweetness, which attracts divine favor. When you declare, "I walk in peace, I walk in abundance, I walk in joy," while tasting honey, your spirit begins to resonate with those very truths. The sweetness becomes a physical reminder of what your life is meant to carry. You begin to not only believe in freedom, but to experience the richness of it. Honey also teaches us that blessings are not only for the individual, but for all who are connected to them. Just as one beehive produces enough honey to nourish far more than the bees themselves, so too does your life, when aligned with blessing, overflow into others. The sweetness you invite through honey does not stop with you. It touches your family, your children, your community. It becomes a generational inheritance of blessing. Just as curses once attempted to become a generational inheritance of suffering, honey flips the pattern, transforming the inheritance from bitterness to sweetness, from scarcity to abundance. This is the beauty of honey as a spiritual tool. It reminds us that life is not only about breaking free from chains, but about stepping into the fullness of blessing. Freedom without sweetness is incomplete. Protection without abundance leaves something missing. Honey completes the circle by ensuring that your life is not just shielded from darkness but filled with light. And so, when you use honey to declare freedom, you are not only ending a curse, you are beginning a flow of blessing that will continue far beyond your own life, carrying sweetness into generations yet to come.